guys? Sick Libra here. Wind on the water always makes this difficult. So, I'm going to wind up saying it multiple times through this video, I'm sure, but I am smoking HH Burley Flake in my fugly pipe. It's good stuff. I really enjoy this blend. So, I wanted to take some time today to talk about the FDA. I'm not happy with them. So, we have the FDA and we have the ATF, which for some reason both feel that they need to regulate tobacco. And that's a problem because with two organizations regulating a particular item, basically all they do is just tighten the nuts down tighter and tighter until there's nowhere to tighten them, until they've choked it off completely. Now, the FDA regulates tobacco under what's called the Cosmetic Act. If you didn't already know. The Cosmetic Act is a ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, broad generalization of regulations that basically cover any nicotine delivery device. Now, Cosmetic Act, let's think about that for a second. They don't want people smoking because it looks bad? Okay, I can get behind that a little bit. Cigarettes are trashy. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I know somehow at one point they managed to make cigarettes look cool and became this really big movement to sell cigarettes and made them more addictive and put more chemicals in it. It's like, oh, well, the cigarettes burn too long, so and they put themselves out. So let's make the cigarettes burn faster so you can fit it in one break. So let's put saltpeter in it, which is the base ingredient of gunpowder. Oh, now cigarettes are burning houses down because people are falling asleep with lit cigarettes. All right, well, we've got to have something to put the cigarettes out if it's not being smoked. What'll do that? Let's put carpet glue into paper. Those are just two chemicals that are thrown into cigarettes that are not specifically to make them more addictive or brand specific addictive, which they as a matter of fact do. They throw in this laundry list of chemicals, like 200 plus long, and they just throw it all in there. Well, why not? That's rat poisoning, why not? Arsenic, cool, get it in there. Let's put petroleum byproducts in there from processing gasoline. Sure, why not? Tobacco companies will take that off your hand. They'll dump it into cigarettes and let the general population dispose of your nasty, toxic waste. Why? Because it makes it more addictive. You know what else is addictive? Heroin. Okay, they just throw whatever the hell they want to in there. as long as it's not another controlled substance. Sure, we'll take your toxic waste. Oh, radioactive material cleaned up from Fukushima? Why not? We'll throw it in a cigarette. And the cigarette companies get away with this because why? They put a warning label on it, and they have a couple of recipes that or one or two recipes that they throw together, and they make it light, or they make it heavy or whatever by just changing the filter construction of it. So they throw whatever they want to in these things, and the FDA says, okay, because you got your warning label on it. But you can't go blending. Now, what wound up happening with this Family Cosmetic Act is it was a great big push by the big tobacco industries, because vaping came out as a cleaner, quote unquote, safer method of delivering nicotine, right? And it cost the tobacco companies billions with a B, if not trillions with a T. Cost them a ton because people were leaving their nasty chemical laden cigarettes for the cleaner and better tasting and less stinking e-cigarette juice, right? So they did that. So the big tobacco companies push to get further regulations put on there. And why not? Because they've got hundreds of trillions of dollars or whatever in revenue and credibility, and however many millions of dollars they throw at the lobbyists to exploit loopholes to pay people off. That's a completely different topic I'm not even going to get into. So you get this Family Cosmetic Act out of it that takes any nicotine delivery system and paints it with this broad sweeping brush. And who does it help? It helps the big tobacco companies, and here's how. The Family Cosmetic Act mandates a deeming regulation that every blend, every cut, every different thing that is produced by a tobacco company after 2007, I think, was the grandfather date that they put in there, has to go through this long, gigantic, rigorous process that costs however much money. It's really expensive. Everybody goes in waiting lines. They lose their profits for however long it takes the FDA to get around to testing their material and deeming it as okay or whatever and whatnot. And then just says, okay, well, you can sell it. So it gets deemed by anybody who processes it and sells it as a smokable material. Now what this does is it requires the same tobacco plant to be deemed multiple times depending on the different blending. So you've got your tobacco, once it is dwindled down to a smokable form, it has to be deemed. So you've got your Virginia leaf. All right, if something changes in a straight Virginia leaf to while it's in a smokable form after 2007, then it has to be deemed. So we'll just say, for the sake of argument, that the first cut does not have to be deemed because it's the same recipe it's been for 200 years, because it's a cut up leaf in a smokable form. It doesn't have to be deemed, but it goes to the first blender. Let's say Cornell and Deal, for example. Now that blender takes that leaf and they mix it with another leaf. Now it's two leaves, neither one of which have to be deemed, but now, since they're mixed together, it has to go through the deeming process because it's a different recipe that's been created since 2007. So, sorry, I got spit on. So they deem it. Yuck. I hate it when that happens. So they deem it. And it comes out as a deemed tobacco. and goes into a another process where it goes to the next blender, which will oftentimes be your house blender. Now, as per the FDA regulations, the house blender is now a manufacturer because they take different products and they mix them together and manufacture a new blend. So now your blending houses are getting screwed, right? So they have to go through the deeming process. Now, I personally do not know a single brick and mortar store that is doing well enough selling fine tobacco to get multiple blends deemed, nor do they have the time or ability to be able to suffer that kind of hit to their profits. So there's no new tobaccos coming out from house blenders. At this point, we have to wait for companies, the bigger of the companies, who are actually capable of doing this stuff, affording and pushing this stuff through. We have to wait for them to say that something is worth putting it through that entire process before we get a new blend. So at this point, development of flavors in tobaccos is slowing to a crawl. It's absolutely ridiculous. Cigar companies wound up with a big problem as well, because even though it's the same blend, different cuts of cigars are required to be deemed separately, which is not okay. Now, the pipe smoking community was able to throw enough of a fit, I think, on these regulations to keep them from labeling each individual style of pipe as a separate deemable entity as a nicotine delivery device, right? So, all the at-home craftsmen or craftsmen that make handmade pipes where every last one of them is different, under the initial sweep of the regulation, every last one of those different handmade pipes would have had to have been deemed separately, which would make every individual hand-carved pipe cost upwards of $2,000, at least. So, you've got the FDA that implements this deeming regulation under some misleading title called the Cosmetic Act, because apparently it looks bad for people to smoke. Meanwhile, big tobacco companies get away with dumping whatever the hell they want to into their chemicals. Why? Because it costs them virtually nothing. It's not even a drop in the bucket of their financial status to throw a new chemical into your cigarettes and then, make the extra payments to get their stuff moved to the front of the line so they can change their cigarette recipe, make them more addictive, more brand-specific addictive, and throw it out on the market. So it's very advantageous for the big tobacco companies because they've got what? 2 blends. 2. You got menthol and you got regular, the vast majority of them. And the only thing that changes on them is the filter. So what? You got to deem, a light filter, an ultralight filter, a non-filter, and your main filter, right? That's all you got to deem on those things. So they're making out like bandits on this. Meanwhile, you can't advertise tobacco in any way, shape, or form. They've also implemented rules to make it harder to flavor tobacco. So your aromatic blends are suddenly appealing to children because, it's all the rage. Kids are smoking pipes these days. They're sneaking them out of their parents' dressers, whatever. It's ridiculous. So the flavored tobacco, which initially they're probably referring to something like, the Swisher Sweets that, had all the different like grape flavors and apple flavors and stuff like that out there. It all carried over to pipe tobacco because they're flavored, and all of a sudden that's appealing to kids. So they tried to work that stuff into the fold. And the anti-smoking people out there are now basically allowed to say whatever unfounded garbage they want to spew. I want to see a study. Please, if somebody knows where this study is, put it in the comments down below because I would love to see it. There's an advertisement out there that the truth is put out there, just saying whatever they want to. A hookah has the same destructive capacity as 100 cigarettes. Please validate this to me in some way, shape, or form. Or, just say whatever you want to. Why don't they just call it like it is? You're allowed to say whatever you want to as long as it's anti-smoking, and that's not okay. So we got that out there. And then you're just going to allow the pharmaceutical companies to put very poorly tested medications out on the market. Not only are they going to put them out on the market, they're going to advertise people so that they can tell their doctors what to advertise for them, or what to prescribe them. How is that okay in any way, shape, or form? And those commercials are almost always followed up immediately, within a few months, by some class action lawsuit where this drug is like killing people, and the list of side effects is longer than the benefits of the drug that's going out there. It's like, hey, take this medication that's gonna clear up your skin. Why not? But it also might melt your face off, cause irritable bowel syndrome, irreversible damage to your reproductive system, and oh yeah, it might cause a stroke and kill you. All right, but you'll have clear skin if it works right. So you get that, and it rolls right out into all that stuff. And all of this is just allowed to go ahead. And I don't understand where that's okay. And I don't understand where the FDA gets their authority to just paint with broad sweeping strokes. And I've written my congressman about this. I've written him multiple times, trying to bring attention to the fact that that they're killing an art form by stepping on the pipe smoking community the way they are. They're killing an art form by stepping on the cigar industries. All right, these smaller niche industries that aren't even really industries, they're just art anymore, and hobbies at this point. They can't even be really referred to as an industry. They're just stepping on them to the extent that they're going to kill them if they continue to go the way that they're going. So, where do you draw the line? And the congressmen that I've been writing, and I've been trying to write my senators and congressmen about it, they just ignore it, and they're like, oh yeah, well we're going to try and keep e-cigarettes around. It's like, that's not what I asked you. I never cared about e-cigarettes. So I did at one point, but I don't anymore. What happens to the e-cigarette industry is what happens to the e-cigarette industry. But the whole principle that, the e-cigarette industry is fighting is the same principle that the pipe smoking and cigar communities are fighting. And you gotta ask yourself, where do they draw the line? Where do they draw the line? I mean, you can label that it's bad for your health all day long, and there's still going to be people who want to do it. But you're able to advertise alcohol that kills more people in an afternoon than cigarettes do in a year. I mean, that's a drastic exaggeration. Do not quote me on that. But alcohol is an incredibly destructive drug. All right, and what's the FDA regulation regulating the distribution of alcohol? There's not one. It's regulated by the ATF, which is an enforcement division. The FDA has nothing to say about alcohol, which is a consumable substance, and it does far more damage than tobacco does, all right, in the forms that we do it, and it's plastered all over TV. You can't watch TV for 20 minutes without seeing at least 2 alcohol commercials. I think Corona's the big one right now. And I'm sorry for ranting, but please, for the love of God, if there's any lawyers out there, anybody who does petitions, whatever, whatnot, let me know. I'd love to sign up. I'd love to start a movement to try and save our hobby. But I'm just a we'll talk to you all next time. Take it easy.